The hills of Elara Prime were quiet, as if nature itself was waiting for the inevitable. Amid the dense fog, an alien army advanced with unwavering confidence. However, there was something they hadn't expected, the implacable determination of a force considered insignificant. What defines a true adversary? Is it the raw power of superior technology or the ingenuity of someone who has no choice but to fight? And what happens when this underestimated force decides to resist? For the Drakari invaders, the answers were about to reveal themselves, with a single shot. As the Drakari soldiers marched through the ruins, laughing at the primitive structures of the human colony, Alen Rykes, a lone gunman, adjusted his weapon. His rifle, a relic inherited from past generations, was not just an artifact. It was a symbol of resistance, precisely calibrated and camouflaged against enemy sensors. He knew he couldn't stop the Drakari advance alone, but his goal wasn't to win a war. It was to send a message: humans were more than they seemed. The first shot cut through the air, breaking the silence. An alien commander fell, and chaos ensued in the Drakari ranks. What was once arrogance turned into absolute panic. Shouts of command echoed, but the formation was already broken. Alen watched from his hidden position, every move calculated with deadly precision. The Drakari soldiers, once proud and confident, were now running around in disarray. Commander Vager, from his safe position, shouted desperate orders, but panic had already taken hold. Alen Rykes, camouflaged in a natural shelter, kept his eyes fixed through his scope, turning the valley into his perfect trap. The environment seemed to conspire in his favor. Every rock, shadow, and elevation was part of a landscape he had studied and prepared for weeks. The second shot echoed, and another Drakari fell. The battlefield became a mess of screams and explosions as the invaders tried to identify the source of the attacks. Their energy weapons glowed brightly in the shadows, but Alen had already changed position, disappearing like a specter. "Sniper! We're being shot down," shouted a soldier, his voice trembling with fear. The contrast was clear: Drakari arrogance, fueled by their advanced technology, was now crushed by the ingenious simplicity of human resistance. For Alen, it wasn't just his weapon that made the difference, it was his knowledge of the terrain, his patience and the precision of each action. As he reloaded, he allowed himself a subtle smile. These invaders believed they were predators, but they had made a fatal mistake: they had underestimated those who fight with everything they have. And now, they would pay the price. This was just the start of something much bigger. The soldiers tried to regroup under the command of Sergeant Drevik, who shouted rapid orders. "Sweep the area. Use the thermal detectors." But the sensors were useless against Alen's thermal cloak. He was a ghost, invisible to eyes and equipment. When Drevik ordered a bombardment of the hillside, explosions shook the earth, throwing rocks and dust into the air. The Drakari advanced confidently, believing that the sniper had been eliminated. Alen, sheltered in a depression in the ground, remained motionless, analyzing his targets. As the dust began to settle, he spotted a group of soldiers searching the wreckage. His next shot was accurate, taking out the squad leader. The rest hesitated, scattering in disarray. The formation disintegrated with each shot, each bullet carrying a clear message: "You don't belong here." The valley was a treacherous maze. While the Drakari tried to advance, Alen used the geography to his advantage, isolating groups and creating panic. His tactics were ruthless: he targeted the officers first, disorienting the troops. Precise shots dismantled the invaders' morale, making it clear that superior numbers meant nothing against strategy and determination. The Drakari, now desperate, began firing blindly in the direction they believed the sniper to be. Energy pulsed through the valley, destroying rocks and vegetation, but never finding its target. Alen, moving like a shadow, was already in another position, loading the next shot that would define the fate of yet another enemy. As each shot cut through the silence, a certainty was established among the invaders: that valley did not belong to them. The predator was not who they had imagined. Can you imagine the impact of a single human facing a superior alien force? Leave a comment below with a comment on what you would do if you were in Alen Rykes' shoes, defying all odds. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to follow stories of resistance and courage like this one. The Drakari soldiers, once dominant, were now gripped by terror. Their initial confidence had turned into pure survival instinct. There were only a few left, all huddled around an armored transport that served as their last stronghold. Nervous murmurs were all that could be heard, while the silence of the valley was broken only by the occasional sound of hurried footsteps and panting breaths. Alen Rykes, from his elevated position, watched with calculated calm. He was not only fighting a physical battle, but also a psychological war. Every movement of the invaders, every trembling voice, every hesitation was a victory. He adjusted his weapon, now more an extension of his own will, and watched. It wasn't time to end it just yet. There were lessons to be learned. As night fell, darkness became his most valuable ally. Shadows engulfed the valley, turning the terrain into a living nightmare for the Drakari. Every stone seemed to hide a threat, every sound a promise of imminent death. Even with their advanced technology, they were blind. Sergeant Drevik, still trying to maintain some order, walked among the remaining soldiers. "He's only human," he shouted in frustration, trying to instill courage in his troops. A younger officer replied with a thread in his voice, "He's no ordinary soldier. He's a hunter." The words silenced even Drevik, who gritted his teeth, trying to mask his own fear. From his position, Alen heard everything. He knew that morale was already destroyed. As Drevik shouted new orders, Alen calculated his next move. He didn't need to rush, the terrain was his. As Drevik began to organize a desperate advance, a shot cut through the night. The sergeant fell, and what cohesion remained among the Drakari soldiers disappeared. Chaos reigned. "He's hunting us," one soldier shouted, but no one heard him. Everyone ran to one side, trying to hide. Alen used the disorder as a weapon, taking down those who isolated themselves while the others were trapped in their own confusion. The Drakari's advanced technology was useless in the chaos he had created. As the night wore on, Alen activated a small transmitter in his armor. A discreet pulse was sent to human reinforcements, signaling that the valley was under control. Still, his work was not done. He couldn't allow any survivors to escape and report back to the Drakari High Command. For hours, he continued, methodical and precise. Every shot, every movement was a clear statement: the humans would not be subdued so easily. The valley, which at first had been the scene of an expected massacre, was now a lesson in determination and ingenuity. When dawn came, the battlefield was quiet. Alien bodies lay scattered on the rocks, their advanced armor useless. Alen Rykes, still vigilant, remained in his position, watching as the sky turned shades of orange. The sound of engines broke the silence. Human reinforcements had arrived. From above, Alen watched the ships land, knowing that they would find little to fight for. He had done the impossible, defeated an army single-handedly. But in his mind's eye, there was something else. This battle wasn't just about that valley. It was a message to the entire galaxy: humanity will not surrender. The silence in the valley was overwhelming, but Alen Rykes didn't relax. His gun rested on his shoulder, but his eyes scanned every shadow. Captain Alvarez had praised his achievement, but Alen wasn't smiling. Something was wrong. He could feel it. The human ships descended with their reinforcements, while Alen remained motionless. Then, among the shadows, he saw it. A faint glow. Movement. He raised his rifle, his eyes fixed on the figure emerging from the rocks. It was a Drakari, badly wounded, but holding something. Not a weapon, an energy bomb pulsing with light. "Captain, we have an armed survivor," muttered Alen, as his heart raced. "Evacuate." The Drakari staggered towards the ships. His eyes, filled with hatred, burned with a final determination. Alen adjusted the scope. There was no room for error. His finger squeezed the trigger, and the shot echoed. The alien fell, the device rolling inertly until it went out. He took a deep breath, the sound of his own heart beating in his ears. The danger had passed. But the warning was clear, the Dominion would not accept defeat. As the ships finally took off, Alen took one last look at the valley. Among the bodies and debris, silence reigned once again. He whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. May they never forget what happened here. The sky swallowed him up with the departure of the last ship. In the emptiness of the valley, there remained the mark of resistance, but also the promise of a war that was still far from over. This was the incredible story of how determination can turn things around, even in the most desperate situations. What did you think of this turnaround? We want to know your opinion in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, leave a like, share it and activate the bell so you don't miss the next episodes. Humanity always has more stories to tell.